Hello, my name is Dr. Randall Parkinson, and I'm here to do a third sort of instructional video on the uh, environmental parameters that have historically existed in the South Beaches or Miami Beach area of Southeast Florida, and how these uh, parameters have changed over time. Specifically today, I'm going to talk about accelerating sea level rise, king tides, and storm surge, and how the combination of these phenomenon have changed the physical or environmental conditions uh, of the barrier island, and certainly of the subsurface of the barrier island. So let's begin. So again, this is the just a map of where the towers are located, and you can see the Biscayne Bay. This is the Miami shoreline of the mainland. Here's Miami Beach. Here's the Atlantic Ocean. And these are data that show the annual average elevation of sea level at essentially at Miami Beach, although the data come from Virginia Key, which is maybe 10 kilometers to the south, but it's applicable to the South Beaches there at Miami Beach. And on the x-axis is time, so the data only goes back to 1994, but this is showing the average elevation of sea level between 1994 and actually 2020. And this is the elevation here, and the elevation is relative to NAVD 88, which you don't have to really worry about. But what is interesting here is if you look at the average annual elevation of sea level, it is increasing, right? There's this increasing slope here with the average annual rate between 1994 and 1996 being 2.3 millimeters per year. But between 2007 and 2020, it's much steeper, right? And it's rising faster. Instead of 2.3 millimeters, it's tripled. It's 9 millimeters per year. And this is attributed to global warming, the melting of continental glacial ice, which adds volume to the sea, as well as the warming of the surface water, which then expands. And this has caused an acceleration in the rate of sea level rise, which is then significant because the conditions of sea level in 1994, where it was relative to the condo, was different or is different than today. So in this case, then, I looked at the elevation of the condominium's basement floor, which is turns out to be plus 0.166 meters NAVD 88. I just looked at how often sea level exceeded that elevation beginning in 1994, because that's when the data began. The condo was finished in 1981, I believe. But look at this. In 1994, sea level exceeded the condominium elevation 200 times a year. By the time we get to 2019, it has exceeded almost 900 times a year. And that is a consequence of relative sea level rise. Sea level rise is accelerating, and therefore the waters are getting higher and higher, and each year then they exceed the condominium's basement floor or more and more often. And remember, there are many other structures and so forth that are located on the South Beaches and buried that would have potentially seen a similar change in their location relative to sea level. So that's sea level rise. Now, these are graphs of tides. So the top one is the tidal elevation throughout the year 1994. And significantly then here are the tides bouncing around, right? Here is the elevation of the condo basement. And what you can see is in 1994, the elevation of sea level, the tides, on occasion exceeded it, but not as on average, until we come into the months of September through December. This is a period called king tide, when the astronomical configuration of the Earth, Sun, Moon cause an increase in the gravitational pull of those uh, the moon and the sun, and make our tides more they exacerbate. There's higher highs and lower lows, but you can see then that the flooding increased during the king tide season. Now, if we go down to the year 2000, there's the condo. Now, look, because relative sea level has increased, it's being flooded to an elevation. Let me make this clear. I'm not saying that the condo was flooded, but the elevation of sea level relative to the condominium basement floor was increasing such that the daily tides often exceeded that elevation. Now, this is the Atlantic Ocean. It's right next to the barrier island upon which our buildings and infrastructure are constructed. And again, they're exceptionally high. So a lot more exceedances we observe during the king tides, which is, of course, in the news all of the time because of just the flooding in South Florida, Southeast Florida, during the king tide interval. Now, on top of that, so you got accelerating sea level rise, you got king tides on top of sea level rise, and then you have hurricanes. So these are the 6 hurricanes that passed through between 1994 and 2020. Here's the elevation of the basement floor of the condominium. And then here are the water levels. Right? And remember, this is during king tides, so the tides are already exceptionally high. And then when we have hurricanes pass through South Florida, they elevate the water even more so. So there's Irene, here's Francis, Janine, Wilma, very short, Sandy, which was very far away, but still had an impact. And then the last one, Irma, again. So what we see then is, the water levels of the ocean are increasingly above the elevations of, in this case, the condominium's basement floor, but any other structure that's at or about that elevation. There's and what's important here is that underneath the barrier island, right? So the barrier island, the condo is constructed on that. Now, underneath the barrier island is fresh water, so the so-called groundwater. And then underneath the groundwater is sea level. But as sea level oscillates and rises, it affects the groundwater table. So here is an example. Here again is our water level elevation. There is the basement floor. Now this is in feet, right? So here are the tides coming through in October through November. So these are king tides. So we've already seen at that period that they're high and exceed. And this is measurements of the groundwater table. So what you can see is the groundwater table is oscillating synchronous with the tides. So there's a connection such that as the phenomenon that occur in the ocean, whether that's rising sea level, whether that's king tides, or whether that's storm surge, is causing an effect on the freshwater table within which this building was constructed, because there's the basement floor elevation. So groundwater elevation is higher than that, right? But it fluctuates. So we can assume that the sea level rise, king tides, and storm surge combined are changing the groundwater system of the Miami Beach barrier island and anything on or in it. So just sort of one more just quick analogy here. So here's our tides, This happens to be the year 2020. So here's the month of September 2020. Here's mean sea level. Here's the elevation of the condominium. This is in feet. So here is the elevation of high tides. This is the tidal cycle, and this line is just drawn along the top of it. And now we move. Here's king tide up to plus 2.18 feet, and then rises. Here is the groundwater elevation, 1 foot above that. So it rises too. So then we get to a point, for example, here, where the groundwater table is 2.5 feet above the basement floor in this example. So again, what we see is that the conditions in which the building was constructed, or any building at that time, those conditions in the substrate and with respect to the groundwater system have changed significantly. Now, in no way am I suggesting that this was the reason that the condominium collapsed. In no way. That will be determined over the months ahead. But it is an example of how our changing climate is changing the conditions in which we live along the coast or within the coastal zone. And therefore, we must consider this as we move forward with how we design and build, and also how we protect ourselves and our infrastructure and so forth from the effects of climate change. So again, here's my contact information and links to the videos that I had done previously. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this.